will, but Facebook will not. Hey guys, welcome everybody to Unmasking on Tuesday at 6. I know y'all is not used to seeing my big old mouth and big old bobble head at 6 o'clock, but I hope that y'all tune in because I am so happy to be here. Guys, it is Domestic Violence Month, and I am here to bring y'all some awareness, okay? And so I'm going to do my due diligence. I have two amazing guests. We have the amazing say go ahead. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself because I'm a
Friend
Tana.
seller. Friend seller.
And she's gonna tell you some things to look out for in relationships. And we have Katrina, and she's gonna tell you some things to look out in relationships. And so, is there anything y'all want to kind of say about yourself before we get started?
Nah.
They're like,
no, that's okay. Let's go ahead and get started.
They're like, let's get down to the T. And so, you know what? Let me tell you how I feel as a female. I don't think anybody ever like gave me advice as a woman. And so how do y'all feel? Do you feel like any advice was given to you as a woman, like what to look for in a relationship?
Nope. Nope.
No, unfortunately, it was never really a topic talked about like in school or in really even in my home life. I never really knew what a healthy relationship looked like or should be like.
Do you agree?
I grew up without my dad. I was in a single mom home, and I wasn't given that talk like a father daughter supposed to. Like, this is what you look out for. These are the type of guys you don't date. I wasn't warned. Not till after I came out of my marriage. Like, I learned everything.
I agree. And so if anybody in the audience, you could type it in because we can see our messages, and I definitely go back and read it later for another show. But I know personally, I felt like nobody ever was like, hey, look out for A, look out for B, look out for C. And so I think that's something as parents. So if you're a parent or
Yeah.
you don't have kids yet, I think that should be something that we should look into. And if you are an author, I'm an author myself, and I haven't thought about it yet. Ding, ding, light bulb just went off. Maybe I should write a book, you
Hmm.
know, a warning. And so,
Yeah.
me, baby, I've been had a whole class to have all this domestic violence on there and do us an ebook, okay?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, like we need to have something. We got to be prepared
Yeah.
for real. Okay, so now this is a good question. So you don't have to me some notes. I don't want to miss nothing, okay? And so I felt because I was also in the domestic violence relationship. Do you feel like there was a sign? Like, could you tell? Is there something you could tell an audience that you feel like there was a sign that you saw before it happened?
There probably was, but like when you're in love, like you're blind, you're in that honeymoon phase. There was red flags going off. Like I would consult my pastor, who I call my dad, because he's been in my life since I was 15. I'm 35 years old now. And there's like certain stuff he would do, and my dad be like, red flag, red flag. But I was ignoring it. Like I was so in love with him. And it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. And my dad was like, he's not going to change. Like, no, like nip this in the bud, and I didn't, and I ended up in the situation that I was in with my ex-husband now. So
If
there was red flags, but I was blind to it. I mean,
if you
loves me, and you just don't want to hear
if you don't mind, I would definitely for the audience like to know some of those red flags.
that. One of the red flags for me was controlling. He didn't want
Okay.
me wearing no makeup.
Ooh.
He didn't want me wearing no jewelry. If I was out with one of my friends, I was on a time limit. Like he timed me leaving the house to go to Walmart, timed me from leaving the house going to my job. I worked at the casino. Like I was timed, and it got to the point. And then the other one was isolation. He didn't want me around my
Mm.
friends. He didn't want me going to church. He wanted limited contact with my family as little as possible. And it got to the point like I eventually got off of Facebook, and everybody got scared. They was like, okay, is Francella okay? Is she still alive? Like, if I'm not on Facebook for more than a week or 2 weeks, like that's a red flag right there because I'm always on Facebook. So that was like control and isolation. Those was like the two biggest red flags for me that that had popped up early in our relationship.
And I thank you for that because the reason I wanted to know the red flags because there's somebody out there who's in a relationship right now who's like you, that's in love right now, and they see those same signs, and they're like, oh, oh, oh. And so the purpose of the show is so they can get the boom. Wait a minute, hold up. What did she just say? So yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
What you got to input, Miss Katrina?
I would say, very similar situation. There were plenty of red flags, but I didn't know at the time, of course, that they were red flags. Knowing what I know now, I would know so, but definitely all of the controlling factors that Sela mentioned, but also kind of like the love bombing, where it's just like you're so important to them and they just can't have life without you, and you're involved in every aspect, and they're checking up on you all the time, and you just think, oh, this is what a new relationship is, or this is what a relationship's supposed to be if you've never really had a serious relationship yet. So definitely those types of red flag signs, as well as and I didn't realize this at the time either, but also like the way they treat other women, their own mom, other people in their family. And I know it's not necessarily just men and, women, but just the way they treat others, the way they treat strangers in public, like waitresses, servers, people like that. Though that type of attitude and demeanor towards them was also a red flag that I didn't notice at the time.
Thank you so much.
Let's say what Katrina said, like the way they treat their mom, that is one thing that my dad said. He was like, the way he treat his mom or his sister is how he's going to treat you. My ex-husband, he totally disrespected his mother. He would cuss her out, wouldn't talk to her for months. And, later on in the relationship, I was called everything but a child of God. I mean, I was called stupid, dumb. I was called a B. I was told you ain't never going to be nothing. Like, I mean, I was totally disrespected. And I was just like, how could he do that to me? But then in the back of my mind, I remember my dad said, the way he treated his mom is how he's going to treat you. Like, what? And it ended up happening. Like, I was just like, oh my goodness, like, this ain't happening to me. Like, no.
Wow.
Now you get to that point, like, oh, he would never do this to me. I'm different. I'm me. He might have did that to the other women, but this is me we talking about. I even went through that phase. Like, he ain't going to treat me like that. I can change him. No, you can't. No, you can't.
Oh, y'all, this is so good. So good. And I thank y'all because I'm telling you, like when we're in that that love place.
The honeymoon phase. Yes.
We do. And y'all both said it. We kind of see it, but we're kind of like, not me. I'm Katrina. Not me. I'm Cecile, not me, right? And because, we're a good person or we're this or we're that. And he's treating us so right that we don't or we ignore. And so thank y'all so much for that. And so now this was something that I know I did several, girl, it's more than several, but how many times did you say I'm out? And did you not be out? Like how many times?
We have time to listen to that.
Thousands at least.
Yeah, thousands.
I mean, more than once a day, every day.
And so,
no, with my ex-husband, I met my ex-husband March 2013. He moved me and my son in to his house like June. And we was together all the way up till 2017. I want to say I was packing my bags every week, just about. There was times like he put me and the kids out. Like he got in his anger rage, and he did put me and the kids out. Other times when he got in his anger rage, I packed me and the kids up. Like we're leaving. Like I can't stay here. But there's so many times I packed my bags, and people were like, "You need to leave. It's toxic. It's trauma bonding. It's not good for the kids. You don't want your girls seeing that. You don't want your son thinking that's okay. That's how you're supposed to treat a woman." And people would call my mom like, "I'm scared for your daughter. I don't want nothing to happen to her." And my mom was just like, I'm gonna keep her in prayer. She has to come to a point where she's going to get sick and tired. She's going to have her breaking point. And I ended up leaving him. I think we were separated for about 5 months, and he moved to New York. And, I wanted to give it another shot before we decided to get divorced. Moved to New York. He was the sweetest person the first 6 months. After that, the mask came off, went right back to the old person. And I'm like, here we go. And I had my breaking point in New York, and I was like, you know what? I was like, I know my self-worth. Like, you're not going to keep disrespecting me. And I got tired. And when I walked out of that apartment, I was walking down the hallway, and I was in tears, bawling. And me and my kids, we was in a lift on our way to Times Square to go get on the Greyhound bus back to Pittsburgh. And I never turned back. Never turned back. Never did.
So from the first time you packed your bags into Pittsburgh till you got into Times Square,
Yeah.
What's that time span?
Like, so, like, far as like me leaving, how many
No
times I
years.
left?
No years. How many years is that?
Years? That's about 4 years, 4.5 years, just
Four
about.
and a half years. Because I want somebody to picture what you're saying, because I want people to know that it's not just the I'm out. It's not a quick fix sometime. And so I want people to understand that
No.
just because you said you were getting out and you didn't, that's okay. You're still
Yeah.
strong. You can do it. You
Yeah.
can do it. You
Yeah.
can do it. You can
A
do it.
lot of people be like, "Oh, just leave." It's easier said than done. And people be like, "Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave?" But I was married to him. That was my husband. I wanted to keep my vows to God and my kids. I grew up without a dad. I wanted my kids to have a father in their life. But if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. You can't force something. Especially, I'm
Yeah.
saved. He wasn't saved, so you know.
She just said something. I didn't even ask. I didn't even put that question on here, but I love that you said it. So before Katrina answered the next question, I don't know if the audience heard it, but it rung so clear in my ear. She said the reason she stayed is because she did not have a father in her life and she wanted her kids to have one. And the reason why that's so important to me, because people always have this assumption of why someone is staying. And because you don't understand, because what I wrote a book. I hate to go here, guys. I'm not trying to say all anything, but I have to go back just because y'all know this is my passion. I wrote a book called Own It, and it's called Take Your Life Back. And why? Because we don't understand that everything we do is rooted from things that happen from so far in our past that we don't even realize it. And so her staying in her bad relationship and taking all of this was rooted from her not having a dad, and wanting better for her kids. So no, if you really look at it how she has it, I mean, that's a great reason to stay, right? But of
Yeah.
course she's going to get beat down for it. And of course we don't want you to get beat up for it, but it's a genuine reason and people don't understand that. So I just had to chime in. Now, do you remember what we was talking about, Katrina?
I forgot the original question, to be honest. Was it if we left and came back, or?
So the question is, how many? Yeah, really, that is the question. So how many times did you leave and come back, and the years in between that?
Well, so in total, we were together for almost 21 years, and I never actually left, and until I left for the final
Right.
time. And a little bit different than Sella, where she said, she kind of packed her bags and she left and all of that. My ex-spouse was never willing to let me leave. So if I was to actually try to leave, then he would physically stop me and or threaten me or threaten my family, just things to make it seem like leaving is so unrealistic to me. So I never felt like I could, comfortably leave and just move, to the next town over or anything like that. I only ever got to a point where I actually left one time, and it was 3 years before I left for good. And I packed up all me and my kids' clothes only, and I stayed somewhere for one weekend, and then I came back home, mostly because my kids were in school. I didn't really have anywhere to go besides staying with someone else, and just kind of didn't know what to do. So I went back that one time, and that was exactly 3 years before I left for good. And so that was 17 years into the relationship.
So you was in a relationship for over 20 years. But at what point in that 20 years that the abuse began?
It was a few years in. It was on my daughter's first birthday, so I can unfortunately remember the day specifically. Now, all the red flags and things we talked about before, those were all going on pretty much the entire time. But the first time he ever physically hit me was on my daughter's first birthday. So we were 2.5 years into our relationship.
Okay. So basically almost 18 years is when you knew that you needed to be out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I wanted to leave and get out of the relationship pretty much the entire time.
And so I wanted to say that. I want the audience to hear that, because people think it's such a cut and dry thing. Oh, I'm getting abused. Oh, I'm getting out. And you heard that story. You heard Stella tell you she left, she came back. She left, she came back. Katrina just told you she packed all their stuff up and she left and she went back. Why? Because her kids are in school. Like, where do I
Yeah, kids
go?
are involved. Kids are involved.
Kids are involved. Like, what do I do as a parent? Like, she done 18 years. And so not I love it, but I love that y'all are being so open because people need to hear your story. They need to understand that it's not so cut and dry. Now, do you even know the reason why you stayed so long? Because if you do, we would like to know. Because some people don't know. Do you know?
Fear
I
for
know
sure.
for me, I stayed because I'm the type of person, I give people the benefit of the doubt. I see potential in them, and I saw potential in them. Like, granted, as far as him being a partner, he was horrible. When it came to the kids, it was kids first. Like most of you know, like my daughter had passed away. My daughter had passed away.
I
Like
wasn't gonna
when
bring
she
that up at
when
all.
she was born, like he protected her like that, like he guarded her, he protected her. Like when she was in the hospital, when she had hospital stays, he stayed, go home, deal with the kids. I got this. Doctor's appointments, when she had her heart surgery, I'll handle the doctor's appointment, because it was like so overwhelming for me. As far as the father, he was good. When it came to a partner, he was horrible. I will say that he was horrible. But as far as fatherhood, he was good. But I just saw potential in him. I'm like, he got a good heart. He got his ways, he got his flaws. Nobody's perfect. That was my mindset. Nobody's perfect. Maybe I'll just keep praying for him. And it seemed like the more I prayed for him, the worse it got. So then I'm like, okay, God. I'm like, now what? I'm like, And it came to the point I had to be sick and tired of being treated the way I was treated. So
Right.
that's what it came down to.
Katrina.
I'm sorry, I forgot the question again.
The question is, do you know why you stayed so long?
Oh yeah, just definitely out of fear and also like financial reasons. I really couldn't afford to live on my own. I had 3 kids, all these different things that after being out for a couple of years now, I realized really were just excuses. But I believe that the number one reason was just fearful of all those things, as well as fearful of what he would do.
Okay, I love that. Did y'all hear what she said? After all those years, now that she's on her own, she realized they was excuses because you're doing just fine by yourself, right? You're you're
Better.
sur-
Yeah.
you're
Yes.
surviving, but yeah, I love it. Okay, so now I don't know if y'all are comfortable with talking about it. So when you finally left, what was that like? Like, I think you kind of told us you got on a bus, right?
Yep. I got on the Greyhound bus from New York to Pittsburgh, that long 6-hour ride. And the pastor of the church that I was attending at the time, his mother had came and picked me up, and my mom was so happy. She was like, "Thank God you're safe." She was like, "I was praying for you. I was worried about you." And it's funny because when I was with my husband, I couldn't get no credit card. I couldn't get a car by myself. He couldn't get a vehicle by himself. We couldn't get a vehicle together. And jobs. I was working part time. I couldn't maintain a full time job because my daughter had a disability at the time. And as soon as when I got back to Pittsburgh, I was able to get a car. I had a full time job. I had like 2 credit cards. I ended up going into the ministry at my church, dancing, being very active in the ministry. So it was like that weight was off of me. Like God was like, I got something better for you. Just like take
I
that,
love it.
take that step of faith. And I trusted God. And just like Katrina said, I was scared. Like, am I going to be by myself? Like, what's going to happen to me? Is he going to do something? Like those thoughts. But I trusted God in the process, and so far he has blessed me to this day.
That's great. That's great.
I would say leaving was like that day and recently thereafter was never like as victorious as I always thought it would be. Like I thought there would be like this great moment where I just felt so great because like I was moving away. And I mean, and I don't know like what your situation was at like the day you left, but I had to basically like hire a moving company, do all this behind his back, move out when he was at work. Like he didn't know anything until he came home and knew everything was gone.
Okay.
And but I always like, especially as the time was approaching, where like envisioned what that moment would be like and feel like, and it was nothing like that. It was like I was very sad and like chaotic and just super stressed, like more stressed than I've ever been in my life. And then just stepping into the unknown of all those other things that we talked about, like finances. What is he going to do? What am I going to do? How is this going to work with the kids? It's just everything. So I was basically like a huge hot mess.
I love that she said that because unrealistically, you see like I'm having a divorce party.
Yeah.
I'm having A, B, and C. You know, I can't talk for everybody who went through a divorce, but I know when I left, I went through straight depression for a minute. Like, I went from a home to an apartment. I went from two-parent house to a one-parent house. Like, I went from help with income to none. And so I love that Katrina was so honest to say, like, wait a minute, I don't know what nobody else was feeling like, but I wasn't feeling all that great. And I'm so glad that you said that and you opened that door, because a lot of times people, the movies, people like, I just left him and
Mhm. It's
no,
not like
let
that.
me
It's not like
no.
that.
You know,
Nah.
when you're packing up with them kids, like your heart is like hanging out. Like,
Yeah.
you're like stabbed and wounded yourself, because nobody, unless you went into a marriage purposely, knowing you're going to divorce. But if you went into the marriage expecting to be married,
Yeah.
if that was you was expecting to do, you didn't expect a divorce. So when the divorce ends, you don't just be like, oh, it's over. I don't know anybody
Right.
who's like, oh, that thing is over, next. No,
Yeah.
we put the
Nope.
next on social media, but we're like pampering the heart
Yeah.
in private, like, it's okay, baby, it's okay, you
Right.
know. And so I'm so glad you said that, because people need to know. Just because you're getting abused, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're like living your best life when you get a divorce or in a
Yeah.
separation.
No.
Another thing is, you don't stop loving someone just because they hurt you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Ooh,
you
that's
would
Yeah.
so
think that you
good.
would. But another thing that was kind of big for me was I had a lot of like guilt over the fact that he needed me so much, as far as I
Mm.
did, manage the bills and, did all these things, made all of his appointments and, all the things
Hmm.
that you do. And, he just couldn't go on without me, of course, after I left. So, you felt guilty of that. And then also it's shameful and embarrassing to say like, oh, I had to leave, this relationship, or because I don't know about you, Stella, but I never told a soul
Mm.
that any of this was going on. Of my kids, of course, knew, and there were. Well, like a week or two before I left, I finally started telling people. So I told like my boss, and I told my friends, and I kind of told my mom, but not really. And then I told my sister, and and so it was like I had all of this going on at one time. So it was like when I made the decision that I was going to leave and actually rented a place and hired the moving company and did all those things, then I was like, okay, I'm going to tell people. So it was like, I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was sad. I was just everything. So when I said a hot mess, I meant all of it.
When
Thank you.
I left New York in an apartment, I took my ring off and I left it on the table. We had a real big duffel bag, and I had like four bags, and a little lift car came, and we was sitting there packing it up. My kids all in the back seat, and I was walking down the hallway crying. And I'm like, man, this is it. I'm like even on the bus, I'm just sitting there like looking over at my kids, like, here we go. Like, people was against me moving with him and marrying him in the first place. So me coming back to Pittsburgh, I was like, it felt like I was coming back to Pittsburgh with egg on my face. And I was waiting for people to be like, told you so. I told you. But
How old were your
people.
kids?
My daughter was 1 years old, 3, and I believe my son had to be like 8 or 9 years old. So they were pretty young.
Yeah.
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 Thank y'all so much. This was so wonderful. It was everything that I wanted this to be. I had never done, I'm asking a blueprint was something that was given to me from God, that I wanted to talk to entrepreneurs, and I wanted to introduce the audience to people behind the brand. And so I never just done a show without entrepreneurs. And so as I was doing stuff, God came to me, it was like domestic violence. And I was like, okay, how does that fit into entrepreneurship? And so that's how the 6 o'clock show came on. And do you know, nobody really wanted to come on, because nobody wanted to tell their story. Y'all are the guest for last week canceled because she was by herself. And then the guest for next week canceled, and I have no guest for the following week. And it really, let me explain, but let me tell you what I learned from this lesson. This really is a very hard subject. Nobody wants to be judged. And y'all are wearing some tough armor because people do judge. People
Yeah.
do look at you different. Well, why did you stay for 20 years? Well, why did you go back? You tell your story, and they like to take your story. Now they trying to use bricks to use your story to down you or to hurt you for later. you know but see, and I just love it because what people don't understand is once we get to the place where we can tell our story, our
Right.
posture different. Like we didn't got beef for 20 years. Like I
Yeah.
didn't got drug, I didn't got this. Like these words can't hurt me.
Yeah.
Like we are
Yeah.
these are domestic violence survivors on my show. And so
Right.
they wasn't ready. And so I just want to let y'all ladies know, thank y'all so much. I know, Katrina, you have a business dinner to go to. And so thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to fit us in, because I know you have blessed some people, and I know Celia. I keep saying that poor baby name up. That's not even her real name, y'all. Her name is, how you say it?
Friend Stella.
Francella. I tear that up too. Okay, I need Ashley's and Maria's on here. I can say those. And so y'all have totally blessed my soul. And I know that anybody who watches the replay, I can't see who's watching today, but I know y'all gonna bless people's souls, because there are people out there right this second who is getting abused. And we just want to tell y'all in agreement that you can get out, that you will be okay when you get out. I
Yeah.
promise you that it may seem like that life gonna get hard. It might get a little bit hard, but it will get better. It's just
Yeah.
like when it rains outside, the sun will come. You keep planting, it will grow.
Yeah.
Okay. No, nothing is easy, but heck, it's not easy now. It's not easy with them stitches. It's not easy getting beat. It's not easy being injured. Is there anything y'all want to say on the way out?
I just want to say that there's life after divorce. There's life after whatever you're going through. Put your trust in God. There's life after. There's better on the other side. And ladies, you deserve more. Like, don't settle. Don't settle for less. You are worth more. Your Father in heaven loves you so much. You deserve so much more. And don't settle for less. Don't settle for anything.
That was good, Celia. Thank you so much.
I would say, and I'd like to thank you for this platform, of course. And also, yes, I wanted to cancel on you 400 times today. But my biggest piece of advice to anyone in any sort of an unhappy relationship of any sort is to document and keep track of things. Because the biggest eye opener for me, especially after this had been going on for close to 21 years, was like 2 years before I left, I started keeping a diary on my phone, like in my notes app on like my iPhone. And I would write down like if an incident happened. So if I got hit, basically. And then I would write like what happened, why, the time and the day. And then I would write like some things about how I feel, like, oh, I feel this way, or I feel that way, or whatever. And I learned this from like a domestic violence website that I had, came across just trying to learn. And then I also started taking photos of the thing. So I only did this for 2 out of almost 21 years. And it's just horrific to like look back on and to read and to see all those photos. And the reason why I started keeping track of everything was because I did this thing, and you can find this online, but it was like basically a murder assessment. And there was like 20 questions that you did. And it was like basically how likely is your abuser to murder you? And if you got so many of the points correct, then you were, they gave you advice on what you should do. So, okay, you need to seek therapy. Okay, you need to get out. Okay, you need to get out and like move to China. So I was like at the worst of the worst. It checked almost every single box. And one of the biggest pieces of advice that they gave was to do that documentation, because if you ever need it for legal reasons, but also just because that was the biggest eye opener for me, is I would look back and I would just think, what if I had been doing this for the whole 20 years? Like, how large of a file would this be? And it would have been that times 10, because I did it for 2 years, And so like my biggest piece of advice is just keep track of those things. And you might feel silly or petty. And you, of course, don't tell him that you're doing that, because then your phone will be destroyed.
Right.
So I just think that was very eye-opening for me. And then after I left, anytime I thought about going back, or if maybe thought I made the wrong decision or whatever, I would pull that out. read it again and look at the photos again and immediately be like, yeah, I'm not even going to reconsider it. And also, thankfully, I mean, I haven't looked at that in probably a year. So it's nice to know, because I was doing it all the time after I left, and then just obsessing over the fact, like, I can't believe I let this happen. I can't believe this, you know, I did this. But now I don't hardly ever look back. I don't really have any reason to. And kind of to the same note that, you know, Scylla said earlier, is that like God has just blessed my lifetimes 100 compared to what it was. I have no financial trouble, no, you know, issues, no anything. And I'm just happy with myself. I'm happy where I'm at in life. I've lost weight, have a nicer house, take better care of my kids. Like everything is so much better than I ever imagined that it could be.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy, guys. Thank y'all so much. Thank y'all so much. It's definitely appreciated. I hope if anybody have any comments, any questions for a later show, I always drop them underneath the comments because I go back and read them later. All right, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in on this wonderful Tuesday. We don't have a song to dance out of because it's not our normal show. But thank y'all, ladies. I'll see y'all for next time. Thank you.
Bye.
Signing out. Make sure y'all share.